So here we are, we finally made it. A modern cartoonist, the art of Daniel Clowes here at the MCA Chicago. And they've also got a giant ball and a humongous head. Look at the size of that head. Those are people sitting there, human people. And then there's that head. It's craziness. All right, so we're about to go in and see what we can see. So when I was a kid, I collected superhero comics, all the way through high school even. But once I got into college, I slacked off, mostly because of money and being busy chasing girls and the radio station, but also there wasn't a comic shop in the town that I went to college, so that made it really easy. By the time I graduated, I sort of got back into collecting again, and at this point I was really in a different place in my mind and in my life. And I found myself drawn to, I guess you would call them the underground comics, like R. Crumb and Chris Ware and Quimby Mouse and Adrian Tomine and things like that, and but especially to Daniel Clowes 8-Ball. All of those illustrators, they feature average or less than average people in sort of unpleasant situations at best, that they usually don't rise above whatever it is that they're facing. And Clowes is a classic example of that. You know, there's all these sort of kind of not terribly attractive people, all the way down to ugly, caricaturistic looking people. They have like a little bit of hope even though they're in a hopeless situation. So it's not exactly nihilist, but it's definitely not sunny and cheery, and everything very rarely works out in the end for anybody. So this is one of the first issues that I picked up, actually. It came out in 1992, and there were a number of things about this particular cover that really caught my attention. One was this hideous guy here, which is sort of a hallmark of Daniel Clowes, is he'll have, you know, these really freaky looking guys. A lot of times they're sweaty. In fact, my wife describes 8-Ball comics in general to people that are not familiar with them as like, you know, it's the one with all the sweaty guys in it. In fact, also this fellow in the background here is sweating. Of course, he's running. And down here, there's also a guy in a movie theater, and he's sweating as well, as you can see. Another thing that really caught my attention, aside from all the line work, was the fact that for some reason, Clowes chose to put serifs on all of the letters. Nobody does that. I still don't know why he does it. He does that most of the time. You can tell actually from the background characters here that he plays with different art styles too. Like he had a whole series of comics that sort of emulated Charles Schulz, both in illustration style and in tone, but again, quite a bit more bleak. So this is a panel of a more recent story, recent being like 2010, from a story called Mr. Wonderful. And this features a classic Daniel Clowes sort of protagonist, if you can even call him that. He's this middle-aged, schlubby, kind of do-nothing, know-nothing, low self-esteem sort of guy. And in this particular stretch, he's at a restaurant waiting for a blind date that he's sure is never going to show up. And in fact, she's late, and so he has a couple drinks, and now he's hammered because he's on an empty stomach, right? So then she shows up, and he thinks, oh my God, I'm on a date with a beautiful woman after all. Now, one thing that's kind of amusing about this entire page is that what's normally sort of the writer's narrative in the box here is actually Mr. Wonderful's internal dialogue, and then the more roundy, fluffy speech balloons are the regular conversation. And you'll see in numerous panels here, he's not even paying attention to what she's saying. He's thinking over her talking. Yeah, I know. How many times have we done that sort of thing? You're not listening, and then you just kind of nod and smile along. He spends the majority of the date caught up in his own thoughts because he has to go to the bathroom so bad. So she tells him all sorts of stuff about herself, and he even responds to her here, and he's not paying attention to what he's saying either. He's basically wasted the entire experience that he could have been using to get to know her, sweating, clutching, because he has to go to the bathroom. And she said something really intriguing here, by the way, that he does here. I always read the sex column first. And what does he say? Oh, I still have to go to the bathroom. And I'm sure we've all been there sometimes, some of us more than others, like most of the time. So one last comment I want to make about Mr. Wonderful is toward the end of the panel, this impish sort of cartoony character appears over his shoulder, and this character represents common sense, basically. And Mr. Wonderful has this ongoing dialogue with this character, like, should I tell her about my divorce 16 years ago? And the imp's like, no, don't tell her about your divorce, you idiot! And I think everybody can relate to that sort of circumstance, where we have this dialogue with ourselves, like, should I say this? Should I not say this? Should I pull out the chair? Should I not pull out the chair? I know that I very rarely used to listen to that voice, or at the very least, it would be screaming at me while I was saying the thing that I knew was inappropriate while I was saying it, but for whatever reason I couldn't not say it. As time has gone by, I've learned how to slow down a little bit and pay more attention to that voice, but I think it's definitely, it's a universal theme that a lot of people can relate to, and ultimately that's what makes Clowes' work so significant. Modern Cartoonist, the art of Daniel Clowes, is now running at the Museum of Contemporary Art through October 13th. Tickets for adults are a strongly recommended $12. Teachers, students, and senior citizens only $7. Children under 12 free. Illinois residents on Tuesdays are free, and they're closed on Mondays. Of course, the Daniel Clowes exhibit is not the only thing here. There's lots of other great stuff. You should come and check it out. Broaden your horizons. I did. Classic example of the sort of below average. It's a great show, and there's a lot there to be. I don't really like recording our arguing. Can't think of the word now. I'll try. Give me a second.